picture. It
kind
just
of is.
happened.
Hello.
Hello.
There's a character that did that noise.
Somebody doing the Queen.
TV. Yes. Hello.
Hello. Scott Thompson?
Yes.
Scott
Yes,
Thompson?
love, yeah.
Kids in the Hall? That's
Yes,
what it is.
Kids in the Hall.
Yeah. Not original. Oh,
So
well.
good.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We are ready to start our Facebook Live. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and we are at our secret OAC headquarters in Kitchener today at Christine's place. And thank you, Christine, for hosting.
Thank you for not making me drive to Toronto.
Yes, we wanted to save her the drive, because the OAC is not about being in Toronto, that's for sure. I want to give people a few, just maybe 1 minute to log in. Because it's a Sunday afternoon, we suspect we won't have a lot of people watching us live, and that's okay. We're going to be talking about exclusion, suspension, and expulsion today, as well as other issues that concern people. Hey, got any jokes while we're waiting?
I do. I looked some up.
Okay, she prepared this
I
time.
have school jokes.
She prepared. Yeah.
Okay, what's the longest word in the dictionary?
The longest word in the dictionary.
Rubber band, because it stretches. That was lame. Okay. I'm building up to the best one.
Okay.
All right. What happened when the teacher tied everyone's laces together?
Okay, what happened when the teacher tied everyone's laces together?
They went on a class trip. And this one,
Is this one pièce de la résistance?
This is on point, because this ties in with our topic
Ties
today.
in with the topic. All right.
Okay.
Go.
Why don't farts graduate from high school?
Why don't farts graduate from high school?
Because they always end up getting expelled.
Oi.
Ay, ay, ay.
Oi. You see what I'm working with here, right?
Hey, I'll do what I can.
All right, how are we doing on the timer? 2 minutes ago we started.
We did,
Okay.
and I can't see if anyone is with us.
All right.
No.
Nope, I don't think
What
anyone's
I'm
with
going
us.
to do is I'm going to invite a bunch of people, or
Okay.
you can.
So if you're watching this posthumously, is that the right word?
No, that would mean they were dead.
Yeah. After the fact?
After the fact.
After the fact.
Yes.
Fast forward a little bit. Laura's going to invite some people to join us, and we hope that they will. And but you maybe we have different friends, so
That's okay. I'm going with the ones that I recognize.
Okay. There's Bruce.
By the way, we didn't plan to color coordinate today,
No, we
and
didn't.
no political statements are being
No.
made here.
No.
None.
Absolutely
None.
not. But we are a nonpartisan group,
We are.
and we're not going to reveal our personal.
Oh, I will.
You will?
I identify as politically homeless. There
Yeah.
we go. I said it.
That's all right. It is very interesting, though, that as parents, we come together with a common goal, and our political backgrounds are irrelevant, as 7 of 9 would say. And
9
are irrelevant.
Star Trek reference. Yeah.
Oh, we do have one person.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan.
There we go. Hi, ladies.
I'm
There we
trying to
go.
figure out.
All right.
how to
Well, maybe I'll read
but I
my
guess if we
preamble. You can
invite it.
keep inviting people, and I have a little preamble before we start.
Okay. Go.
Let's go. So welcome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our live chat. My name is Karen Boite, and I am a member of the Ontario Autism Coalition's Board of Directors. I'm a very important person.
Yes, you are.
We are a nonpartisan advocacy group who work to ensure that the Ontario provincial government provides appropriate supports to children and individuals on the autism spectrum. This is Laura Kirby-McIntosh.
Hey.
This is Christine Rose.
Hello.
These two moms are expert advocates for their children, and I'm going to ask them some questions about their most challenging experiences navigating the school system. Some of these stories will curl your hair, and they may be upsetting, but stick with us, okay? This is our 4th Facebook Live concerning education issues in our province. Our last broadcast about schools dealt with some very serious topics. We talked about violence, self-regulation, shortened school days, and all of these talks are available for you to watch on our Facebook page. Today, we're going to go deeper.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes, please
Maybe
do.
someday we'll figure out how to convert the Facebook Live videos to YouTube videos,
Yes.
so that they're easy
Yeah.
for people to find. If there's anybody out there in internet land that knows how to do that
Yes.
and would be willing to volunteer their time to do that, please contact us.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'm married to a guy who can do that, but
Well,
you know,
it.
yeah, I know. Sorry.
Karen.
Speaking about videos that you can watch, Laura is recommending a fantastic advocacy page. It is, what is it?
It is advocacyforinclusion.com. If you missed our previous talks on IEPs and IPRCs and sort of education basics, it's a great place to start. They've got these great fact sheets that you can download. They've got really good resources on how to build collaboration with your school. So sort of the talk that we're doing today assumes that you've moved through all of that stuff, and we're really going to try to troubleshoot, you know, what happens when things get really bad.
Yeah, and the videos are super short, so it's not like you have to read pages and pages of like stuff that these guys love to do, of like terminology.
Nothing like
and
curling up on a Saturday night with the Education Act.
That's right. Woohoo!
Candy's my
These guys,
favorite.
yeah, big fun.
Look, Megan's posted
Hi,
the link.
Megan.
Thanks, Megan.
Oh, thank you for posting the link, Megan. So today we're going to talk about exclusion, suspension, and expulsion. These are heavy topics. Please feel free to share our live broadcast with friends and any Facebook groups that you belong to. We want to reach as many people as we can. Please also note the OAC is not about throwing professional educators under the bus. We have a professional educator right here, and we have great respect for people who work with our children. We know, and we know that schools have to work hard with dwindling resources. We also know that hundreds, if not thousands of families have toxic relationships with their child's school. And in many cases, both the schools and the children have been set up to fail before the kids even enter the building. There's a lot of information out there on how to advocate. This website we just mentioned. Megan, thank you for posting that. And we hope that you'll do as much due diligence as you can. But what happens when it all falls apart? We at the OAC ask if every parent must constantly advocate for their child, how fair is the system anyway? And as I mentioned, some of the issues that we discussed today might be upsetting. We're already starting to tear up. It's very hard to accept that your children fall through the cracks. When it's your child, it's crushing. We get it? So let's talk openly about our challenges. And as our Prez, Bruce McIntosh, says, nothing bleaches like sunshine, right?
Disinfects.
Disinfects like sunshine. Okay.
Yes.
So I want to start today, rather than going to the questions that people have submitted. I'd like you all to get to know the beautiful Christine and the amazing Laura. And I want to spend about 15 minutes talking to them about the challenges that they've had with their children and the experiences that they've had with the school system. But please feel free to post your comments as we go along. Give me a little time to allow Laura and Christine to share their stories, but we will respond to your posts. I think that their experiences will help a lot. Okay, so Christine, we're talking today about exclusion, suspension, and expulsion.
Yeah.
Can you define what it means to be excluded from school? Are we talking about being left out at recess and not being able to make friends and things like that?
No,
Okay.
It's a lot more serious than that. So exclusion means that your child has not been suspended or expelled, but they are not permitted to enter the school. So exclusion first came about in the Education Act under Part 10. There's a clause in there that allows principals to deny access to the school for certain people.
So a principal can make a decision that your child cannot enter their school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's under section
265(1)(m).
1M.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So
that's a lot of power for.
it is. So
Yeah.
it's my opinion that 265(1)(m) was originally written to exclude intruders. Perhaps there's somebody, a threatening adult coming into the school, or someone that isn't a student coming into the school threatening the safety of students and staff.
I see.
What happened then was PPM 145 came out regarding behavior and progressive discipline, and in there they talked about the exclusion clause under Part 10, and further allowed principals to exclude students that were registered under that school.
Okay. PPM
Policy Program Memorandum.
Right.
And so that's basically an addenda or a directive to school boards as to how to apply pieces of the Education Act.
So are you aware of, without naming names, are you aware of families whose children have been excluded from school?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's lots that self-identified on the poll that you put up. There's lots that have contacted me over the years, and it's happened to my kid.
Happened to your kid?
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I don't know about the original intent of the exclusion clause, but I do know that the data is showing us that it's being used more and more, particularly for kids with special needs, where the school feels that they can't meet the needs of a kid that is showing particularly challenging behaviors. They've exhausted all their options. It's not something that I think any principal does lightly, but it is something that principals are doing more and more with alarming frequency.
Right. You mentioned that your child was excluded from school. So how old was he when this happened?
As I mentioned in the car, there's a lot of chaotic history in my son's background that I'm not as good as he would be at sequencing all of this. He started off with a really good school placement in grades 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
He was in a special class for kids with Asperger's syndrome, and he was partially integrated, and things were going fine.
Okay.
A new principal came in, and his behaviors started to spike that year. He got bounced to a new school with no transition plan. We had like one little booklet of, here's your classroom, here's your teacher, and we had one visit to the school, and that was it. There was no transition plan document, there was no transition meeting.
Right.
It was just boing, bounce into a totally new school.
Right. So you just had to drop him off and hope for the best.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
To his credit, he lasted 6 days.
Okay.
Before the massive meltdown happened.
Yeah.
But then what we had was a principal and a school staff that didn't know our kid.
Right.
And a principal that grossly overreacted to the situation. And a massive meeting was held the next day after the blowout. And I walked into a room with somewhere between 15 and 20 people around the table.
Right.
And was informed by the principal that Cliff was to be excluded from school until further notice. I didn't know what that meant at the time.
At the time, no. What now? The behavior or the blowout that he had, was that an unusual event, or was it
for the school?
For that,
not for Cliff, not for my son.
Not for. So you were aware of him being being volatile.
Yeah.
And possibly set up to fail.
Yeah.
Was there ever any discussion about how that could have been avoided or how you could have helped the school?
We were insistent, as many parents are, that he needed one-to-one EA support.
Right.
And that wasn't in place. There were a couple of days where, and I think it was because he knew the superintendent of Spec Ed was actually in the classroom. And he said, well, I'm kind of the one-to-one. I was like, okay, that's a fairly unusual situation.
Yeah.
But clearly, like we said to them, he has to have this level of supervision. Otherwise, he's going to have a meltdown. This is a new school, new people, new environment, new noises, new sights, new sounds. So to a certain extent, it was only a matter of time. And we told them, like, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
We need to get a plan in place. No, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. He's going to kaboom. Oh, now he can't get to school.
Now he can't come to school.
I remember saying to people on the school board staff later, if you wanted to do a workshop on how not to transition a kid from one school to another when that kid is on the spectrum, this is the case study.
Yeah.
You know, he was set up to fail. But then very clearly the message was, your child is dangerous. He did and said scary things. Here's a picture of a scary thing that he drew. You know, and it was all like, he was not even 12. He was maybe 10, 9 at this point.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were getting these predictions of, you know, this horrible future that he faced. This kid's going to wind up in jail one day.
And those things were said to you at this meeting with 20 people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, we had a lot of questions. The first thing was, you know, what is this word exclusion? You know, I'd been a teacher at that point for over 15 years. I'd never heard of exclusion. I'd heard of suspension and expulsion, but what is this? And it's like, okay, so you're saying he's not allowed to come to school. Okay, how long is that going to be for? Well, we don't know. Okay, how's he going to get his education in the meantime? Well, we don't know. When do you think you might know? Well, we're not sure. And at that point, my husband and I just sort of took over the meeting and said, okay, well, look, there's a lot of people here and you're all making a lot of money. So we're not leaving until we go around the table and each of you say what you personally are going to do to help our kid get back into school. Mm-hmm. And we turned the meeting on them because the meeting started off as very much a blame session. Yeah. That the child was to blame, he was dangerous. They had to think about the safety of the staff and the other students. Mm-hmm. That had to be paramount. We couldn't make this all just about one child.
Yeah.
But where does his right to an education come in? So, I mean, that was a really long, uncomfortable meeting. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, they were able to provide one-to-one support for our son while that meeting was taking place.
Right. So
which I found fascinating.
Excluded from school.
Yep.
No transition plan.
Nope.
No ideas in terms of where you should go next. Mm-mm. Just don't come back.
Just don't come back.
Don't come back.
Now, fortunately, I'm in a job where I was able to say, okay, this is an incredibly stressful situation mm-hmm. for me. And so I took a stress leave from work to try to deal with the situation. Yeah. And essentially homeschooled him myself for a little bit while I was also going to therapy and doctors and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. But notice the background. We'll come to that.
Yeah. But I was quite insistent. I knew instinctively, although I hadn't gotten into the legislation yet, that no matter what had happened, my son's right to an education had not gone anywhere. Yeah. And so I was quite insistent with the people at that table that, well, something has to be worked out because he still has to receive an education. Yeah. What passed for an education in the first few months after the exclusion was a retired teacher being sent to our home with not one, but 2 child and youth workers, basically fridges, enforcers, bodyguards, to keep her safe.
For your 10-year-old child.
Yeah, because he's so scary and dangerous. Trying to cram into a room that's like half the size of this one. It was...
Did you get a sense when you're sitting there, here you are, mom, with your beautiful 10-year-old guy, who's a great guy, by the way, 20 people, and there's a general consensus that he's not allowed to come back to school. Yeah. Did you get a sense that, was there any derision? I mean, people like to keep their jobs, but they were all so sure that this boy is unteachable, and there's no place to go but home.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have any ideas. And I mean, this is a large GTA school board that I won't name. That
GTA school board?
Well, it could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere in the GTA.
That's the GTA is
big area.
Yeah.
And they were insistent that there was nowhere else for him to go. Yeah. What happened over the next few months was I mean, I can say comical now looking back on it, but it was desperate at the time. I would get a call from the superintendent of special ed saying, okay, we've got a placement for him. We've got it, and you're really going to like this. And so the first thing was, okay, we're going to send him to this program, and it's got this name. Okay, can you give me a phone number? Can I call up the teacher in this program? I'd like to go and visit it. I'm not going to send my kid to a school that I've never set foot in.
Because
I'm
you already did that,
because
right?
I'm an unreasonable special needs mom,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And what happened when you did that?
It didn't go well.
It didn't go well. So maybe you were trying to help them help you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I call up the teacher before I even go to this school and say, so, hey, tell me about your program. And he's really nice. And he's like, well, this is a program for kids that have been suspended or expelled in our school board that have, severe behavioral problems. And this is where we come to get them ready to go back into the school system.
Okay.
That doesn't sound like a class designed for a kid with autism. Do you have any other kids with autism in the class? Nope. Have you ever? Not that I can think of. Thanks very much. Click. Call the superintendent back going, no, what we need is a placement for a kid with autism. Yep. Okay. Takes it back. A couple more weeks go by. Hey, we've got the perfect placement for him. You're really going to like this. I want you to go out and see the school and meet with the teacher. Awesome. Drive out to the school, meet the teacher. She's lovely. We click like this.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in the classroom with her at the back, and there's all the empty desks because the kids have gone home. And I said, don't identify any of the kids, obviously, but tell me what you're dealing with in this room. And there's only like 10 desks.
Right.
And she's like, well, that kid there has a severe eating disorder. This one deals with crippling anxiety. This one is being assessed for schizophrenia. And I'm like, this is a mental health classroom.
Right.
Yes, it is. Okay. Have you ever had a kid with autism in this classroom? Only once. How did that go? Horribly. Okay. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So we kept getting called to these meetings. Here, sign this. I was like, no, I'm not signing off on that placement when I know it's not right for my kid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the clock is ticking. He's out of school.
Yeah.
And he's losing time.
And this is his time.
And meanwhile, my students back at my school are going without, the pleasure of my company for a while too. So, I mean, not that they were terribly broken up about it, but anyway, months go by and finally we get a placement. Here's a classroom. It is specifically designed for kids with autism. It's a Section 23 class.
What is a Section 23 class?
So Section 23 is a part of the Education Act that allows treatment to happen in classrooms. Now that can be emotional support and treatment for kids who are in custody, kids who are in jail. It can be treatment like the mental health class that I had visited, and it can be a specialized class for kids with autism.
Right.
It is ridiculously difficult to find out if there is a Section 23 class for kids with autism in your school board. Okay. One of, I think, the biggest frustrations for parents is that when you sign your kid up to attend in a certain school board, you'd think that they would want to give you a list of all of the schools and all of the specialized programs that are in those schools.
Yeah.
They absolutely don't want to do that. And it's just so backwards. David Lepofsky says it's like going to a restaurant where they refuse to give you a menu.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
Anyways, we finally get word that there's this dream classroom. We're like, wow, they do a combination of ABA and education. They have teaching staff and they have therapy staff, and it's wonderful. Except, now I know how old Cliff was. He was in grade 5 at the time. Okay. Whatever age that is. 5 plus 6 is 11.
11?
Okay. So he's 11. 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And the problem is that this school doesn't admit kids until they're in grade 6. And by this point, he'd been excluded from September to now we were coming around and it was March or April and still no placement. And so what they permitted out of the kindness of their heart was that he could go to this school from April until June, but he would go down into the basement of the school and not have any contact with the older kids. And he would be taught in the basement by specialized staff. And then the next year, he was a real boy and he got to go into the classroom. It was just, and then there was the whole business with the service dog, and we don't even have time in this for that story.
So from the time he was excluded to the time he won the opportunity to go study in a basement of a school, that was 7 months. September to March is 7 months.
At least,
right?
7 months.
Of you on the phone, sending emails, writing letters,
Oh, I wrote one doozy of a letter at one point. I went out and met with a guy named Norm Foreman, who's an education advocate. I think he's still active, although he's been on the scene for years. And I got a 1-hour consult with him, and he recommended that I write a letter. And I remember I shared it with Christine.
It is a good letter.
I want to read it.
Multiple times while reading it, I thought, ooh, she's good.
Well, she is. That's why we're here.
It was a 7-pager, and I basically went one by one to all of the ministry documents about special education.
Yeah.
And it said, this one on special education in general says the following: please tell me how my son's exclusion embodies the principles in that text. Now here's your ministry document on including kids with autism. Please tell me how what you're doing breathes life into that. And I just went policy.
Can I get you to rewind a little bit? Sure. You know, you weren't there when the big blowout happened. What was the big event that made him into Canada's most wanted?
He wasn't.
What was this catastrophic event that earned 20 people coming into a meeting and all agreeing their child should be excluded from school for more than 6 months?
He had a meltdown. And I don't want to.
Was anybody hurt?
I don't want to go into many details because I don't have permission from him to talk about that.
All right.
But he went into a meltdown and he yelled and did what kids do in meltdowns.
Okay, so we'll respect your child's privacy and not go into the details. Those of us who are parenting children on the autism spectrum, meltdowns are a part of our life. It's not the most pleasant part of our life, to say in the least. And certainly it's not the most pleasant part of a teacher's life, to say in the least. Your story kind of reminds me about what happens to adults. That when we have adults in this province and someone has lost control, we have 2 options. We have the police or the psych ward.
Yep.
And that sounds like what happened to your child. Is that we're not dealing with a mental illness. And mental illnesses are a serious issue for adults and some children, and that's a whole other classroom. I
remember saying to them so many times at that point, like if he was a student with epilepsy and he had a seizure, would you be doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah.
If he was a kid in a wheelchair and he fell out, would you be doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
A meltdown is a part of the experience of living on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And there was so little thought being given to his dignity as a learner, as a human being. It was all about the teachers and their safety and the parents that were bringing their kids into the daycare that was housed in the school.
Right.
And the safety of the other students. And it was okay, but what happened that contributed to him losing control like this?
What were the series of events that might have led him to not being able to manage the situation that he was in? And was there any discussion at all about what may have led up? Because nobody here is saying we love the meltdowns.
No.
We don't. But was there any discussion about how it could have been prevented or a second chance? Or
the problem when you get to this stage is that the system is completely reactionary. Nobody was taking ABC data at this point. It was all, this is the incident that happened.
Right.
And how do we react to the incident?
Yeah.
And so, looking back, had I known then, I would have insisted on a much more detailed transition plan. I would have fought the transfer.
Right.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
but at that time you would have probably not had any idea how difficult it would be to find another placement.
No,
right?
And we were sold a bag of goods that this new school that he was going to be transferred to was going to be fantastic for him.
Right.
And I still wonder, like there's the kids that he started off with in grade 1, 2, and 3 that he's still friends with.
Yeah.
That got to stay at that school. And one of them just got accepted to McMaster University. And my guys by the way, can I brag for a second?
Yeah, brag.
Because he's made his way from that dark place to he's now attending a school, a regular high school, fully integrated in most of his classes, earning credits, on track to graduate by the time he's 21. He's found his thing. He knows what he wants to do with his life. And he doesn't even need to take his dog with him to school anymore. He's completely independent. And I want to say that because in those dark days, I wasn't even sure he'd make it to high school, let alone earn a high school credit.
I think oftentimes you're being told by school staff that he won't make it to high school.
Oh, yeah.
His child cannot learn.
Yeah.
They will never be in a regular class.
Yeah.
Did anybody
They won't
ever
graduate high school.
say anything like that to you? In the fog of...
No, I don't think I would have tolerated that.
Yeah.
And I do think that, well, not that I think, I know that people responded to me very differently in those meetings because I'm a teacher.
Okay.
And
wow, I wonder how the rest of us would have.
Well, this is what I wondered, and like Bruce and I sometimes he would go to a meeting, and I couldn't because I was working, and then another time I would come along with him, and he'd be like, they are completely different when you're here, because I would disarm them and charm them, and I speak the teacher language, and I can use their acronyms, and we can bond over stuff like that. But with that comes don't mess with her because she knows the system to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I also launched a huge charm offensive with one of the women that was sort of in charge of that big meeting of 20 people. And I said to her that day, I said, honey, one day you and I will go out for dinner and a glass of wine because Cliff will be placed in the right spot with the right supports.
Yeah.
And things will be better.
That is massively generous of you, Laura.
Well, we did go.
You did.
It took about 2 years, but we did go, and I think she paid. And it was a really nice meal. But and but I remember just seething in anger, looking around the table, calculating in my head how much money was being spent just so those people could attend the meeting, and saying to them, you know what, if you just all build your time and spent that money giving him an EA, we wouldn't even be here. Yeah. It wouldn't be necessary.
It does feel a little like the tail wagging the dog.
It really was.
In situations like this.
Well, and they were, they're so afraid of, one of the things that I really mourn as a teacher is the way that schools, at least from the administrative perspective, principals are no longer actively involved in the leadership of their schools. Yeah. They are a liability buffer. And so much of their job is now looking at what's going on in their school and going, uh-oh, where could we be sued? Where could somebody report a teacher to the college? And everything is reactionary. Yeah. And it's so, that's why it's so hard, I think, we see on our boards all the time people saying, where are the good schools? And the answer is the good schools are where the good principals are. Yeah. And I almost wish that we could start tracking star principals. Yes. Like we can't track the bad ones because we get sued, but we could track the good ones. Yeah. Maybe we should give it like OAC principal awards.
And that is not how education was once.
It's not
formed.
It's
now what we have, our principals are essentially middle managers, I would say, right? In the pecking order, and it's just a very different point of view.
Well, and sometimes you get principals who want to do great accommodating things for our kids, and then they get overruled by the higher ups.
Yes, and I've known some great ones. Again, we're not about throwing people under the bus here, or individual teachers or individual principals. And if you happen to be watching this and you're an educator, this is a real life story, and I really appreciate that Laura shared this with us. I asked her to. It's a very painful memory, as you can guess, and I happen to know that there's a lot more to this story, but we won't. Yeah, we won't torture her or torture you. I think you get the idea, right? And if you are somebody who's listening to this story and just completely freaking out that this might happen to you, we're talking about extreme situations today. Yeah. We're not talking about maybe having small minor, doesn't feel minor when you're the mom, but you know, this is we're talking about when the wall really goes up and you just don't have anywhere to turn. That's what we're talking about.
Well, and you hear now about schools doing things like, you know, if the parents advocate aggressively, the schools are banning them from coming on school property, and you know, and they
determining the agenda of a meeting.
Oh, one of my favorite meetings that we ever went to was one where an agenda was given out, and Bruce took it and tore it in half. I tossed it on the floor, and I remember watching, going, "What the hell are you doing?" Right? Everybody around the room just freaked out. He said, "No, I'm going to tell you what's on the agenda. What's on the agenda is our kid." And just like, I mean, yes, there's a lot of strategies that we sort of intuitively learned on the journey. One of them was how to play good cop, bad cop. I was almost always good cop, except for one meeting where we went in and we were both bad cop, and that was my favorite meeting.
Let's get back to that.
That was so good.
I
brought pillows.
Let's pick Christine's amazing brain. So Christine, you've been to a lot of meetings at a lot of schools.
Yes.
How come?
Because parents hit a wall.
Yeah.
They hear no, and they think that's the only answer. They think they don't have any other options because they feel, why would the school mislead us? The Education Act is written in such a way that it's difficult for the average person to understand. And a lot of parents don't have the time to do the research that it takes in order to fully understand the system and understand their rights. I've done a lot of research, and because of the types of jobs that I've held in the past, I've learned to decipher legal documents. And so I'm able to read the Education Act and say, okay, this is how they're meaning for this to be applied. This is what this means in plain terms.
Yeah, she's very smart.
And I'm kind of weird in that I like to sit down and research.
See, that's what I don't get.
Stuff like that.
This is what drives me nuts. I just want to watch Game of Thrones and have a lot of Diet Coke. I don't want to study the Education Act and study school policies, and oh my God, you know, it's too much for me, and I don't like. It's boring. So it's not fun.
It's boring and it's frustrating.
Through my own journey, I ended up doing a lot of research.
Yeah,
and I do enjoy researching, and so I did a lot of research, and I try and take what I know and help other families through their journeys.
You do advocacy for other families, and in addition to your own child.
Yes.
Can you talk, without going to specifics, about a meeting you may have had where a child was facing possible suspension? Have you ever come across that situation?
Yeah. So many times when a parent contacts me, they're in crisis.
Right.
Either suspension is on the table, or the term exclusion has come up. Their child is melting down at school. They're, spending more time at home than they would be in school, and parents are at their wits' end.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I like to get a background story. Tell me what's happened. Show me the assessments that you've had. Maybe I can meet your child. That really helps when I can meet the child and get to know the child, because that's who this is about.
Yeah.
It's about the children.
Yeah.
And it's not about their behavior. It's about that person. It's about that human.
Yeah.
And so I go into schools and I try to reason with the principal.
Yeah.
And try to approach it from a collaborative approach, because this parent may potentially have to work with this principal or this staff for many years to come.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to do is put up more walls.
Exactly. Yeah. Then make it more toxic than it's already become.
And I think there's a lot to educating the educators.
Yeah.
And doing it not from an arrogant standpoint.
Yeah.
I know more than you.
Yeah.
But doing it from a help me help you.
Yeah. Well, as mothers, we have really no choice other than to try to understand our kids and the way they perceive the world and what is difficult for them to manage. We have no choice. We live it 24/7.
Yeah.
And we do become experts on our own children. And if we don't, well, good luck to you. But there's no choice. It's very hard, I think, for many of us, moms and dads, to understand that even though someone is a professional educator, they haven't put the same type of thought and imagination into what upsets and triggers the children.
Yeah.
And I think it's very hard. It was hard for me, I'll admit it. I had to really change the way I think about what it means to be a child, what it means, what human development is. And suddenly, if you're able, the cartilage breaks in your brain and you learn to go with it and you learn strategies and all that crap that we have to figure out. We send our kids to a school expecting that these professionals are ready to go, and you realize they haven't done the same due diligence. How do you talk to someone who's so sure they're right and not be upset? This is the most personal thing. You're dealing with your family. They're messing with our families here.
Our babies.
They're messing with our babies. They're messing with our families. A wall has gone up, and you, as the mom or the advocate, the onus is on you to stay calm. The onus is on you to be convincing. The onus is on you to get your point across. And it's not happening.
So
tough stuff, tough question.
It is. I always try I'll often present information, and I try and find information that's maybe been written by other teachers. There's a great part of the ministry website called What Works? Research into Practice.
Okay. And the ministry website.
The Ministry of Education.
Ministry of Education.
And if you go under the teachers section of the Ministry of Education, you can find these publications under What Works? Research into Practice. And some of them are special needs related or learning disability related. And these are all articles that have been written by teachers for teachers. So I think that's a great resource. And I also try and understand it from the teacher's perspective. One thing we have to keep in mind when we're advocating for our children is the political environment that we're in. I think our government has a large part to play in supporting our school boards so that our school boards can support our children. And I think there's a missing link there. And so we have to go in and try and empathize from the teacher's standpoint as much as we can, and then show them, this is what I've tried at home. And can we just try this? Let's just try it. Even if we just try it for a couple days, let's just see if this will work. And come back to me and let me know what you think. Is this something that you can implement into your day? Is there some way that I can make it easier for you to implement it into your day? And when we get emotional, because look, right now, all three of us are quite emotional just talking about this. We have wine on the table.
I'm driving, so no wine for me. This is difficult. It's really difficult to keep a clear head. The onus is always on the parent to, because if you lose your mind, then you're the crazy mom and the walls go up.
You can end up becoming...
Can I say something though? If you do go into a meeting and you lose your mind once, please forgive yourself.
Yes.
You're allowed. And there's a few times where I've become emotional in meetings, and it's not always a bad thing. I mean, it's a bad thing if you scream and yell and swear and threaten and throw furniture. But if you break down and cry, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think teachers and administrators can sometimes divorce themselves
That's right.
from the human.
Yeah. We're people.
Yes.
We're families. We're mothers.
Yeah, and these are our babies. And you know what? If my baby's not getting the support he needs, and if he's being bullied or he's being left out, you know what? That hurts, and it's okay to show that once in a while. You know, another piece of advice I think you and I always give families is never go into these meetings alone. Always take somebody with you. I was blessed to be able to have my husband go with me for most of them, and we would, like I said, we would tag team. Sometimes I would do nothing but take notes, and he would do all the talking, and then the next meeting we'd flip it around. And you know, we'd use some of the same strategies I think that administrators use on us. You know, we'd be the last ones to sit down, and one of us would be taking notes, and just little things so much of it is head games. In these meetings, they really play on parents, and we would just play right back. Anyway, Megan's saying here, I always make sure I don't have any other commitments on the day of the meeting with the school board, and I allow myself that. That's really good advice.
Something else that I've said too when I've sat in meetings in schools is I will ask the principal, who at the board do you want me to go to help you?
Yes.
How can I advocate at the board level to get you more support? And I really try to make it that I really do want to see you supported so that you can do your job so that my child can learn.
This is the thing, this middle management stuff, right? You know, they're the line, the principal is the line, and I'm sorry to say some principals interpret that as being, I have to keep conflict at bay, I have to keep, I'm the gatekeeper, we're going to have everything be calm and civil. But that is a neurotypical way of thinking, right? And it is very hard to, we want their compassion. In a way, I don't really want anybody's compassion. I want their understanding. I want their understanding that if I could just tell my kid what to do and he just did it, like neurotypical children do, yes, they get naughty, yes, they break rules, but they know that they've broken a rule. You know, I can think of listening to a mom complaining one time about her child lying about stealing some chocolates. And I was like, I would give anything for my kid to steal some chocolates and lie to me.
That would be such an advancement in his development. We would have a party.
He understood that there was a rule. He understood that he broke the rule, and he understood that he had to protect himself from the wrath of mommy, you know, because he stole a chocolate. And we, as parents of children on the spectrum, we have to get rid of all of that. It sounds logical, right? And it's really hard to break free of that thinking and go like, okay, so, you know, anyway, so I won't go on about that. But and when you're sitting in front of somebody who really hasn't even entered those concepts into their imagination, and they've decided that the best solution is to exclude your child, it's mind-boggling to me. And Laura, what does that feel like when you grow up? I assume we were similar. We're about the same age. School was fun. You know, sometimes
I
not
love
fun.
School so much.
Sometimes
I became
fun.
a teacher.
Yeah, school was fun. You're a social kid. You had teams, and you had things that you did, and you had hobbies, and you loved your teachers, and some were good and some were bad, and there were painful moments, and adolescence was crap, but you got through it, you know. And
I survived 5 years in a Catholic girls' school.
There you go. Well, they go. Oh, St. George.
Yeah. The more you get to know me, the more that explains.
And so what does that feel like with you? There's just this, we understand that this is a good province. This is a good country. We look, everybody gets looked after. And then all of a sudden,
and there's how can it possibly
your
be
child is out. Your child is out. You can't come in. Well, what does that do to you?
I mean, the first response is shock. Because, well, I think most parents know that, you know, they get phone calls to come and pick their kids up, or they get asked to keep their kids home from trips, that there may be suspensions. But I didn't even know what exclusion was until it happened to our kid. So the idea that there was this unwieldy part of the Education Act that the principal could just throw down to protect themselves.
One person.
One person could invoke this.
Could do that.
So, I mean, looking back, there's a bunch of things that that I would have done differently. I mean, I never got it in writing. I should have done that. So that's step number one. And P.S. There's a great video about exclusion and suspension and expulsion on the Advocacy for Inclusion website. And it says, you know, the first thing, get it in writing and get their reasons in writing. Yeah. And often just asking for that will disarm them to the point that they may reconsider the decision, because now if it's in writing, they can be held accountable for it. And the thing about the use of exclusion, and on Arch's fact sheet here, it's right here, they can use exclusion, but not in a way that violates the Ontario Human Rights Act.
Yep.
So if they are excluding your kid because your kid has a disability and because they can't accommodate the disability, then that exclusion is in direct violation of the Human Rights Code and should be challenged. Now, I want to take a second here to tell families, because this always kind of, I have never told you this, but this always kind of happens after our lives, our Facebook lives, is that I get a bunch of inbox messages from parents going, help.
Yeah.
And I try to help as much as I can, but I also, between my full-time job as a teacher and parenting my 2 kids on the spectrum, often don't get to them.
This is also why we're doing these Facebook Lives. Yeah. I'm giving you Laura. I'm giving you Christine.
Yeah, feel free to inbox me.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. There you go.
Maybe go that way.
Go that way.
But go that way. But yeah. But the other thing is that don't be afraid to call Arch Disability Law. They'll give you a consult, as will Christine, to say, let's look at your situation and assess. But I think my instinct, I don't have data to back this up, but my instinct is that a lot of the exclusions that are being used are in effect illegal, are situations where the principals are thinking first of the liability issues of what happens if this kid has another meltdown at school and hurts someone, and what am I on the line in that regard? But we have to make sure that they are equally considering their legal liability from the perspective of our students' rights. And we were talking before we went live about sort of the big systemic picture here, and I think what's really important is everybody understanding the perspectives of everybody else in this complex system. I mean, for me, the journey from being a teacher with no kids to being a teacher with spec ed kids was a wild one. I think as parents of kids with special needs, we have to come around and, as you said, think about how to help the educator, how to educate the principal. And I'll pause here to say nothing disarms a meeting like a box of Timbits and a tray full of coffee. They kind of don't know what to do with that kindness. But they also desperately need the coffee that you will make friends. But understanding that, and then also understanding the way that the school system as a whole right now is shifting. And I mean, let's be honest, 20, 30 years ago, our kids wouldn't have been in schools.
In institutions.
Right?
Yeah.
And so our school system is dealing with that change.
Right. Yeah.
School boards are spending more on special education than they're getting from the government. The funding formula is broken. The teachers are observing and the EAs are observing that they're getting hit and injured more. So alarm bells are going off about that. But the whole system is in crisis. And part of the solution to that crisis is going to be changing the traditional classroom. My days as sage on the stage, I will stand at the front of the classroom, I will transfer my wisdom to your brain, you will regurgitate to me, I will give you the marks. Those days are gone.
And a lot of people didn't enjoy that experience, that education, not just people on the autism spectrum, right?
But we have to open the doors of our classrooms. And if it truly takes a village to raise a child, then we gotta let the village in. And I'm happy that when I go to talk to our partners at teachers' federations and the unions that represent the education assistants, when I talk to other teachers, when I talk to professionals in the system, they get that. That it's time to let the behavior experts into the classroom and the speech and language pathologists and the OTs.
And they may just be dying for it. I mean, call me an eternal optimist, but I kind of feel that our children are going to pave the way to a whole new model, a whole new revolution in education. Like, this is the good part of this, and that we have to keep, as mothers and fathers, we have to keep talking, we have to keep learning, and we have to show our children's educators that how amazingly interesting and brilliant our kids are.
Well, that's it.
They are
so looking at our kids
cool.
as an opportunity rather than a negative.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say to other parents and other people in the system, the best thing that ever happened to me as a teacher was having 2 kids with autism. Because I've gone from being able to have like maybe 2 different ways to explain a concept to, like, I think back of the 6 months that we took on I, you pronouns.
Yeah.
I want the pen, give me the pen, you have the pen, I have, holy, like, I had no idea how complex that was.
That's right. Yeah.
But now I can take a concept and I can explain it 7 different ways, and the teacher in me finds that exciting.
Yeah.
I like the challenge.
Yeah.
So if we can get teachers to stop receiving our kids as problems to be fixed, and instead as, oh my God, this kid is going to teach you so much, and you're going to have so much fun, and you're going to see the world in a completely different way.
Cool way. I think that word behavior is a tricky word, right? So for the ABA people, behavior is. You know, it is a behavior that happens. In the school system, a behavior is something that must be corrected.
A negative word.
It must be corrected, controlled, and contained.
Yes, and controlled. So much of the system is about control.
And we just hate it when people are out of control. We just can't stand it. Like, you stand in line and you wait your turn. And it's like, but
although, have you walked into the average elementary school lately?
Yeah.
Anytime when my kids were in I'm a high school teacher.
Yeah.
I walk into the average elementary school and I lose my mind. There's kids running everywhere. There's noise everywhere, and it just, to me, it looks like chaos. And yet there is some kind of control there, but I bow at the feet of
what time are we doing? I said we were going to talk for 15 minutes, and I wanted to ask Christine some more questions. How are we doing? We're at the 56-minute mark.
Okay.
We could just go on. Christine, would you be willing to share one of the biggest personal hurdles you had with your own child? Like, we're sitting here in this beautiful room. It looks like a classroom, but this is Christine's home.
Yes.
And you have made the decision to homeschool your child, right for the moment. For now. For the foreseeable future. For the foreseeable future.
Until university.
Until university or college.
Yeah. Probably because he's learning so well that he's become a poster child for homeschool.
Right.
He does not understand why brick and mortar schools even exist.
Yeah. Right. That's the rub for me, because that is, and I have no comment to make about any parent's choices, because I've learned that everybody makes the decision that's right for their child, or the best decision they can.
Yeah. So he was.
So, but can you tell me what led, unless you don't want to?
No, it's okay.
What led to you being here and having this beautiful learning environment where peers are not here? Yeah. Which I assume is the downside. And everything else, the upside is that he's learning and doing a beautiful job, right?
Yeah. So,
and you're out of the workforce, yes?
Well, I have my business.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you get here?
So he went to school, to a public school for up until almost the end of grade 3.
Okay.
So he went in JK and stayed until almost the end of grade 3. The trickiest part about the school that we were in was that school staff, it was like a revolving door for school staff in that particular school.
Right. Yeah.
In the 5 years that he attended that school, he had 4 principals.
Right.
And he had a different cert, so spec ed teacher, every year, and sometimes it would change halfway through the year.
Right.
That is a very difficult environment to advocate in, because as soon as you get somebody convinced, Now you have to reconvince the
Yeah.
next person coming into that role.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
The other aspect, I guess what led us here was, regardless of the amount of support that he had, and he had a lot of it, we did have the school coming to us saying, what can we do? What else can we do? And it was his anxiety level was getting to the point where now he was having behavior at school.
Yeah.
He was having the behavior, the challenging behavior was not just happening in the home anymore. It was happening everywhere we
Yeah.
went. And he wasn't my kid anymore. He was a different kid.
Yeah.
And the anxiety, the stress that he had was leading him to these meltdowns everywhere he went. And I guess the straw that broke the camel's back was the day that I got a phone call saying he ran away. He's not on school property. And when I got that phone call, I remember exactly where I was. I was sitting on somebody's front porch discussing homeschooling with them.
Oh, wow. And like a sign from
Yeah.
God.
And a sign from God was the phone call
She's
from
not
the
subtle,
school saying he's not in the school anymore. We can see him out the window. He's on the sidewalk, but he's not on school property.
What are they doing? Just watching him at this
They
point?
were watching him, and I said, you know what? That's it. That just
We're
made
done.
my decision. And the school they really were doing a lot to try to help. They were coming to me with all sorts of ideas, and I said, you know what? This just isn't the right environment for
Yeah.
him. He doesn't want the support because he didn't want to look different. He's aware enough that he knew, well, my friends don't have to go to speech therapy. My friends don't have to go to OT.
Yeah.
My friends don't have to go to boys group, which is what we called ABA.
Right.
My friends don't have to go work on the Chromebook in the resource room.
Mm-hmm.
My friends don't need earmuffs.
Right.
Why do I need all these things? And he was getting very down on himself. And when I got the phone call, my heart broke.
Yeah.
Because I knew he couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And he was breaking.
Yeah.
And so I know when my heart breaks every time I get a call from a parent.
Yeah.
Because I know what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been home now. We've been homeschooling for almost 2 years. And we're breaking down, we're breaking through some of that, what I call like mental scar tissue.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
that's a really accurate way to put it.
And
Heartbreaking, but
he's at the point now where when he goes out to do various things, so you talk about the peers aren't here. However, we do so many social things.
Yeah.
That he's getting more than enough. At times we have to say, you know what, it's too much social.
right.
Yeah.
Because he's starting to stress out now.
Yeah.
He's starting
Yeah.
to be surrounded by too many kids.
Yeah.
And so he's at the point now, he's loving learning so much. He's able to learn at his speed.
Yeah.
And in some cases that's very advanced, and in other cases it's
Right.
bringing him up to grade level.
Yep. Yep.
And now when we go out somewhere, if he's in a social situation and it's getting too noisy, now he's okay with putting the earmuffs on.
Yeah. Right.
He's
Because he can make the decision, okay, I need this.
He can make
I
the-
want
yeah.
to be here. I
yeah,
want to enjoy whatever it is that we're doing.
yeah,
I can, we do the earmuffs too. And I can relate very strongly to that.
yeah. And he's actually becoming a better advocate for himself now,
Right.
because he's not so stressed in his head
Yes.
that he's actually able to stop and think
Yeah.
now and
Yes.
say, this is what works.
Well, his senses are no longer under attack.
Yes.
I mean, the rant I just went on about like what a typical elementary school is like to walk in.
Yeah.
You know, you imagine how a kid on the spectrum receives all of that when they're only 4, 5, 6 years old and they're just starting off.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as much as our kids struggle at that age, I have to hold out a little bit of hope for parents and teachers out there. You know, the kid as you see them right then and there in that crisis situation is not the way the kid is always going to be.
Yeah.
And I marvel and celebrate every day with our boy the things that he's able to just walk through that would have been showstoppers 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And you know, you talk to adults on the spectrum and they'll tell you this.
Yeah.
And talk to more adults on the spectrum.
And by the way, we're going to do a Facebook Live with two amazing women who are willing to share a little bit about their lives. They're adult women on the spectrum, and you'll be hearing from me about that.
Yeah, they're amazing.
You know, to play devil's advocate with this, and I have a lot of parallels with your story. So you've got a kid that has all of these sensitivities, anxiety through the roof.
Yeah.
In my child's case, his anxiety doesn't look like anxiety. It looks like he's having a rockin' time, you know, and so it's a little bit hard. But then the teacher would say, well, what can I do? I can't change the classroom. I can't change the hallways. I can't change the announcements. I can't, you know, what do you want me to do, lady? You know, and here we are going, my baby, he's overwhelmed. He's just overwhelmed. Yeah. He's not trying to misbehave. He is overwhelmed. And we all get overwhelmed.
Yeah. Can I say something here that might surprise you?
Yeah.
I think on the one hand, you know, the OAC has established this reputation as being ferocious advocates, and we want our kids in the school, and we want ABA in the school, and we want to fight exclusions and suspensions. I think, though, that we have to, as parents, recognize sometimes that it may be in our children's best interest to have a shortened day. Yep. And as offensive as it is to have our kid left out of the field trip, sometimes we have to look and go, how much does my kid need to go on that versus how, like, we have to weigh things and understand that nothing is forever. That, you know, IEPs are open living documents and IPRCs happen every year. And I see Casey posting here that, you know, she's being given what's being pitched to her as an opportunity for a contained ASD classroom. And I wouldn't presume, Casey, to make the decision for you, but sometimes our default position is to fight for full inclusion, full integration. And I guess one thing that I can say, because my kid's 18, is that he has cycled like this over the years. There were early years where he was fine in a mainstream class, and then there was a period of several years where he was absolutely not okay in that environment. Yeah. And a Section 23 class was exactly where he needed to be at that point. And so I think,
my goodness. Sorry, everybody, that's my phone.
Oh, I'm gonna hit decline.
Yeah.
Swipe.
Oh,
Right back.
swipe. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
I'll just turn that off. Sorry about that.
Do you know what happens when kids' phones go off in my classroom?
Oh, no.
Actually, legitimately,
get it.
I answer them.
Hi.
Hi. Karen's teacher speaking. Can I help you right now? But I guess just to finish off that idea, it's, you know, we have to recognize that sometimes when options are being given to us that we intuitively recoil at, we need to spend a little bit of time considering those options because they may be in our kids' best interest for a period of time. The trick is to make sure that if you agree to them, you send the signal to everybody on your kid's team, I'm not accepting this as a permanent placement for my kid, but I'm going to recognize that my kid's anxiety is so high right now that this is what they need until they learn the skills to self-regulate a little bit more.
It's tricky, right? And this is also why we have to be very careful. I'm not giving anybody any advice because I'm the wrong person to ask. But we know our kids are so different, and it's as Laura's saying, be careful about what you want. You know, because it can be, I'll only speak for myself. My need for my child to be accepted overwhelms me, you know? And so when he's not, or I perceive that he's not, it's extremely painful and it's hard for me to think straight, you know? And often he teaches me what he can handle and what he can't.
Yes.
And just as you've made this extraordinary decision, and I'm not going to say, oh, what a mom, what a martyr, what a, you know, because moms and dads do what they feel they need to do for their kids. But I say bravo to you for identifying and knowing what was best for him.
A big part of that decision too was actually him saying, I want to be homeschooled.
Yeah.
And I think if, depending on your child's communication ability, if you can sit down with your child and ask them, what do you want?
Yeah.
How can we help you?
Yeah.
What's good about school and what's not so good about school?
Yeah.
They can tell us that.
And oftentimes the information you're going to get is amazing.
Yes.
And so he played a major part in that decision.
Yeah. That's another good example of the difference between raising the neurotypical child versus the child with extraordinary needs or special needs. Is that we're not about letting the kid off the hook. I know you well enough to know that that's not what you're doing. You know, it's like, oh, you don't want to go to school today? That's okay. Put your, you know, that's not, this is not your Prince, my darling, whatever you want. You want some more pop? Here you go. You know, this is not that. Is that we have to rethink the way that our kids learn and help them learn. And my amazing BCBA at Charlie's Center, one of the first things she said to me is that we want Charlie to thrive, not just survive.
Yes. Amen. Well, and I think, Christine, you raise a really good point about your kid being able to articulate his desires and his wants. And, you know, something that I know a lot of our autistic self-advocates will be happy to hear me say is that I strongly recommend that before you think your child is ready, take them with you to the IEP meetings. Before you think they're ready, take them to the IPRC meetings. Yeah. Let everybody in that school system see your child. If your kid's having a bad day, take them anyway. You know, if your kid, you know, is doing something super fun and you want to let them do that, and take a picture of your kid. But as soon as possible, our kids need to learn to self-advocate. They need to learn that these meetings happen, that there are people talking about them. And disability advocates would say, you know, nothing about me without me. And presume competence on the part of your child. They may not be able to participate in 100% of the meeting, but I've seen my son come in for 10% of the meeting and change it. And be able to just say one or two things really clearly about what he likes and what he doesn't like, and the whole meeting turns.
He threw our premier for a loop not so long ago. Walking into premier, he schooled her. He sure did. It was really impressive. It's on our YouTube page.
Look up Kathleen.
It's absolutely fantastic. She didn't know what was happening.
It was great.
Fantastic.
AMD in the headlights.
It's fantastic. Okay, we've been going. It's an hour. It's been an hour. Okay. So Casey is the only person who's posted something as far as I know, and you addressing it, but she says
not guaranteed for him to go back to his homeschool. Casey, I might suggest that you work with an advocate, and you know, if you would agree to try this different placement.
She said we turned it down.
They turned it down. You know, the big thing. Okay, I'm gonna rant a little bit here.
Go ahead. I love your rants.
So
go ahead, Laura.
Okay, let's go. So one of the things that's been an eye-opener to me as a teacher is how much the science of ABA is driven by data. And as teachers, we collect some data on our students. We mark their things, but it is astounding to me how little the work that we do in classrooms is based on evidence about what works. I remember years ago, before I had my kids, going to a conference about teaching and the brain, and ate it up. I was like, wow, what if we actually took the principles of neuroscience and applied them to the classroom? What if we recognized that there are some ways in which boys' brains are different from girls' brains? What if we actually did things in our classroom that were based on data? ABA does that, but there's so much right now. Well, not right now. Education has always been the victim of trends and fads that come and go. In the 60s, they thought it'd be a great idea to tear down all the walls between the classrooms and have open concept classrooms. The school that I work at has a section that's sort of a hangover of that. We call the open area. You know, and de-streaming was a fad as I was coming into the profession. Let's get rid of the academic, applied, whatever levels in grade 9. We did that, we tried it, and now we're about, 25 years later, we're about to try it again. I want to encourage parents to take a look at a movement that's coming out of the UK called Research Ed. It's kind of like TED Ed, the logo, but Research Ed is hosting some conferences. They held their first one in Toronto earlier this year. I'm going to one in a couple of weeks in Mississauga. And it dares to ask the question, how would the school system be different if it were based on the science of what works? And the thing is, we know what works, and it's alarming how little we do it. And I think one of the big opportunities that kids with autism bring to the school system is that we sort of come in and say, look, the science of what works with our kids is very specific, and it's very data-driven. But what if from there, we found out and said, what if everything that we did for all of the kids was based on data and science about what works? And getting teachers like me to stand up at a PD session where they were talking about a school that eliminated grades and report cards for grade 9 students. And I'm open to new ideas. I'm like, okay, let's stick up my hand and say, what does the data say about doing that? Well, it's early days. Okay, I don't want my kid to be your guinea pig. I mean, somewhere there has to be a guinea pig, I suppose, but we have to be cautious of fads in education. And, we also have to convince educators that ABA is not a fad. And that ABA is not just for autism. What I do for my kids is now informing what I do in my classroom. Putting a detailed lesson plan on the board or on the screen is not just good practice for my kid with ADHD or my kid on the spectrum. It's good practice for everybody.
Well, anyone in business, if you are a manager, well, if you are a manager and you have a staff, you will know that some people need a written outline of what they're supposed to be doing. Some people, all they need is, can you get this done by Thursday, please? And oh no, Jennifer is going to handle that. And a good manager will not micromanage that person and say, go ahead, give it to me when it's finished. There's all kinds of different people that think all kinds of different ways. Some people need their hands held. Some people need to be left alone. Some, we are this way. Autistic or not autistic or neurotypical or any kind of developmental difference, or blah, 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 blah. It's kind of cool. So what do we do? Like, how is it that we moms and dads are learning that our kids learn differently? And some of us are fortunate enough to be a part of the funded programs by the Ministry of Children and Youth Services. And we see this amazing work happening that is supportive and loving and fun, and meltdowns happen, but it's part of the day. And they are handled and dealt with in constructive ways and proactive ways. So we see this world, and then we see this other world. What are we going to do, Laura? there is an election coming.
I'm so glad
in
you
June.
raised that.
There is an election. What do we do? What are we going to do? What do we do? Tell us.
Well, there's so much that needs to be done. What we've tried to do over the last year or so is lay the groundwork for what we're going to ask of the parties in the upcoming election. And whether we're talking about reducing the use of exclusion or the Safe Schools Act to suspend our kids or what have you, the big ask has become really clear, and that is to put real ABA into classrooms where there are kids with autism, not ABA light, which is what's happening now, not ABA-based strategies, but real ABA with data being collected, supervised by a BCBA, informed by all of the best practices of that.
And what does ABA light look like? So if
40-hour course.
Here, if you ask me the question better, I'll give you some wine.
Okay, ask me the better question.
That's
Can you ask
ABA
it better? Okay.
That's ABA light. Oh, look, I've used a reinforcer. Now I'm going to fill out a report saying we did ABA in this meeting. That's ABA light. They use one strategy that they learned once at a workshop that lasted for 1 hour.
So
and they think they're doing
possibly a reward-based
method.
You know, do this and get a cookie, or
they've learned how to prompt. They've
which
learned
is just
one part,
which is just the beginning
of a
right?
whole series of things.
Yeah.
And to me, the biggest part of ABA Light, the thing that frustrates the hell out of me, is the amount of school boards that are saying that they're doing ABA and they're taking no data. And I'm sorry, if you're not taking data, that's not doing it.
And you notice my response too, which is like, I didn't pick up on what she was doing. That's how smart I am. You know, but when you said, what did you ask me?
Ask the question a different way.
In a different way. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? What? Yeah. Now, so, to go for a child, right? Can you imagine how perplexing and frustrating that would be? Ask me a different way.
I don't know. The only thing worse than no autism training is not enough training, or bad training. Yeah. Because I know that the ministry has funded the Geneva Center, for instance, to offer programs to educators in autism and ABA, and that's great. But none of them are up to the standard that is required for the agencies funded through the Ministry of the Ministry of Children and Youth Services. Yeah. So you've got this huge gap between the quality of ABA that's available in the community and the quality in schools. And that's the whole basis for the SCIRT human rights case. That's right. Shout out to Beth and their family.
Thank you, Beth.
If there are any ridiculously wealthy people, please donate to the funding of her human rights case, because it stands to blow the lid off this whole crisis. But the big focus for us, I think, in the election is having the conversation about not just kids with autism, but any child with a disability in the school system, about how their needs aren't being met, about how the funding formula is broken, about how EAs are both the unsung heroes and the most underutilized resource in the school system. They are so woefully undertrained. Trying to start a conversation about what if we got specialized autism EAs trained up to the level of a registered behavior technician, an RBT. It's not a lot to train them up to that level. And then have BCBAs that work for the school board to be monitoring all of that. But it's about having a conversation about how the old model of school that was set up 150 years ago, when kids had to go back to the farm in July and August, that's literally why we have summers off, so kids can go harvest. We're not living in those times anymore, and it's time to change the whole system.
And if there happens to be a teacher watching, I mean, one of the most frustrating things for me to see is, I'll quote you badly, but we've got two silos here, right? We've got the Ministry of Education and we've got the Ministry of Children and Youth Services. And there is so much goodwill at these centers for people who work with kids with autism. Not only goodwill, but there is a expertise and a system of checks and balances. You've got the junior people being supervised by the more senior people, and then there's the BCBA, and maybe a psychologist. Things have changed. But there's a whole team approach, right? And for us to throw our kids in the school system with a teacher who doesn't have any of that, any of that kind of collegial collaboration, is horrible. It's not fair. It's not right. And I know that if we were to blur those lines, that ABA folks and teachers would become colleagues. They absolutely would be.
I I can't imagine
You know?
an elementary teacher looking out at a classroom that has, kid, 7 different special needs kids and an ESL kid
Yeah.
saying, no, please don't come in my room and help me.
Yeah.
So the walls that we have to tear down here are not walls, I think, that teachers are putting up.
That's right.
It's walls that the system has put up.
Yeah.
And so we need to get creative about our advocacy around training of EAs. We may get into the weeds a little bit on collective agreements and looking at who is legally allowed to do what. That's why the regulation piece is so big.
Yeah.
We've been asking since 2005 for therapists to be regulated. I can see from a teacher's perspective, well, how are you going to send this uncertified, unprofessional person that doesn't have a regulatory body into my classroom and tell me what to do?
Yeah.
But I think the stage is set now where professionals can come together and say, let's work as a team to educate the kids in this room. Because as a teacher, I can definitely say I am done trying to do all of it for all kids. I just marked a set of papers where one was 5 pages long and had embedded citations and a beautiful MLA8 bibliography and amazing punctuation, grammar, and all of that. And another one, and this is an open level civics class, another one where there was no capitalization, no sentence structure, no bibliography, and all of those kids are in one room together. Mm-hmm. And I'm supposed to shoot down the middle and try to help them. I'm so over that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of teachers are. We recognize that we can't be all things to all people. Mm-hmm. And as parents, as a parent, I want my teacher's kid to give my kid what they need. But I also recognize from this side of the desk, oh my God, that's a big ask, because there are other kids in that room.
Yeah. This is extremely complicated work.
Yeah.
That teachers have to manage. I want to ask you a good question, Christine, but I can't think of a good one. Which maybe we're dwindling down.
I've got one for it.
You've got one, but we haven't really. So we've talked about exclusion.
Yes.
And I think that it was very important to shed light on this. Most people probably haven't even entered this situation into their imagination. Mm-hmm. I certainly had, until a mother in the OAC made it known that her child was excluded from school, and I went, "Oh, what is that?" Mm-hmm.
Surprise.
And I thought it was excluded from recess, excluded from, which are also very difficult issues. We did post a poll.
Yes.
Some people added a few categories, and the one I don't know. Did you add perhaps a category to the poll? So somebody did, and it was not on the topic that we talked about. But the number one response was that their children have been given a different. Can you find it?
Different educational structure. So not doing whatever.
So that was 47 people responded to it. The next one was
called to pick your child up early from school.
Okay, so could we talk about that number one response there on the poll? That wasn't part of my original poll, but clearly that's on people's minds. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit broad, so what do you mean by different?
Well, that could just mean modification appropriate to an IEP, but I suspect that there's more to the story.
Right.
Yeah. And possibly alternative programs. Maybe their child is being underestimated. Their learning abilities are being underestimated because perhaps they don't communicate the same way that you and I do.
Yeah. So maybe my question to you is, I think my kid's a genius, smartest boy ever, right? And I know he's capable of a lot, but getting through is difficult.
Yeah.
Do you think some parents might believe that their teachers don't believe? I'm going to get in verbiage here. That some professionals don't think the children are teachable, therefore they're giving them work that's. I can give you an example. This is not a good question. I have a good friend whose child is non-speaking, and he has learned to communicate with a letterboard.
Yep.
And he's an
RPM.
incredibly interesting and super funny, smart guy.
Yeah.
He is lingering, or was lingering, in a DT class where they were still showing him letters and numbers. And this boy, once mom had learned this technique of communication and they worked together, not only did he know and could identify all of that stuff, he was writing and communicating in full sentences.
Yes.
So she told me a story one time of her boy. And she does these lesson plans that she has put together for him. After his long day at school, they sit down and they do this work.
God, our kids work hard.
Oh, we ask them to work so hard.
We do.
We ask them to work. So they were talking about an octopus. You know that octopus that could predict the future? You know, there was this thing. You know, anyway, it doesn't matter. There was
What you talking about, Karen?
What you talking about, Willis? They were talking about octopi, octopuses, stuff. Okay. And my friend said, you know, we're Greek, and sometimes we eat octopus. You know, and would you like to try it? You know, and her 10-year-old boy said, no. Oh, why? Because it would be atrocious.
Whoa! Wow!
Right?
Yeah.
Spelled perfectly.
Beautiful.
You know, and this boy was in a DT class.
Competence.
You know, with the teacher going, hey!
Oh, God.
And so I would ask that
Hey,
parent,
right?
have you had that same conversation or a similar conversation with your child in front of your teacher?
Yes. Bring the kid to a meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Show them what you can do
Show them
with
what
the
this
kid.
child can do.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Or
wondering
videotape yourself at home.
at
Yes.
home, yeah. Because I'm wondering
did
if
that too.
if that polling question might be something like that. Like you have a feeling. You have a feeling there's a lot more happening.
Yeah.
But for a variety of reasons, the kid isn't able to share what he knows.
Yeah.
Or
You know?
demonstrate it.
Or demonstrate it.
Well, and so often the approach of schools, again, that react to behaviors is, you know, if I ask you to complete a worksheet and you tip the chair over and have a meltdown, well, I guess that was too hard. And so we give you something that's a lower level and a lower level. And I remember getting to the point where I checked my son's binder and he was in grade 6 and they were giving him grade 2 level math stuff. And math is not his weak spot.
Yeah.
But their response every time he had a behavior was to reduce the task demand. Well, that becomes counterproductive.
Yeah.
Sure. And especially if we look at the average child developing and we think of it as a straight line and that, okay, this step we're going to do here and this step we're going to do here. And so many of our kids are like this, you know, they may have the
Or like
advanced
this.
mathematics or like this, or, you know, so
Or like this.
keeping data.
Yep.
And
Helps
really
you figure
out what the kid is ready for, not capable of, but ready for.
Yeah.
You know, what was the second highest polling? It was to being called to
pick up your
pick
kids?
up your child from
Yes,
school.
yes.
This is a big thing.
Yeah, it's
So,
a huge
yeah.
problem.
Christine, teach us.
Well, I mean, there
What
were
do you do?
numerous times when I was called when my son was in the public system. I remember, you know, taking him to school in the morning and going to work and thinking, what time are they going to call me?
Yeah.
How long is he going to last
Yeah.
today before I get that phone call?
Yeah.
I recommend to parents that if your school is asking you to come pick up your child, tell them you want it documented.
Yeah.
Perhaps you even want to go as far as, if you're going to require me to come pick up my child from school, I'm going to require you to suspend my child for the day.
Yeah.
And the reason I recommend that is for a couple reasons. One, then you have documentation of
Yeah.
all the times you were asked to come pick up your child.
Yeah.
Two, when you start adding up suspensions inside the child's student record, there's going to start to be a need there for support.
Yeah.
What can we do to support this child? Because we've got a number of suspensions. What can be changed? What can be done
Yeah.
differently?
Yeah.
And you've got that documentation there. Because a lot of times they'll call for you to come pick up and there's no documentation that you've done that.
It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there.
God, we have to be such, in addition to being perfect and calm during meetings and educated about, you know, the Education Act and all the PPMs or whatever, we have to be organized. We have to make binders like
Yes.
this for our children. And we have to document every phone call that we make,
Yes.
and we have to send follow-up emails, and we have to.
I don't want to do that.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to.
I know you don't.
I
want to.
hate it.
I know you.
I want to watch Game of Thrones.
Me too. Me too. But damn it, no one is gonna.
I don't
do
want
this
to
for
live
you.
Game of Thrones.
Yes.
I want to watch Game of Thrones.
I want a dragon.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Just had to live that fantasy for a second. Can you imagine bringing the dragon to your IRC meeting? So I just want to bring one of the little ones, little baby dragons. Put it on the table. Hi, this is my friend. Right?
This is Louis. I
Okay.
pull his tail when things don't go my way.
Oh, all right. So humor is the way that we cope with our stress, clearly. But we have to. No one else is going to do this. I think the lowest point for me was realizing no one's coming to rescue me.
No one's coming.
No, there is no knight on a white horse that's going to run into this situation. I kept looking for the knight, going, surely if I call the right advocate, or if I call the trustee, or if I reason with the principal, I will get a champion that will fix this. No, you are your child's champion. Period. Full stop. You didn't sign up for it. You don't want it. Too bad.
Too bad.
You chose to have the child, so
Sucks to be you.
you got to do this.
Yeah.
But the payoff, though,
Yeah.
and I remember being like right in the thick of it with our son, and people saying things like, there, it gets better, and saying
I didn't believe you when you said
and
that.
saying to them, so help me God, if you are lying, I will come back and I will haunt you and I will hold you accountable. But you know what? They weren't lying.
Yeah.
Our kids go through really rough patches, but they do get better. They do acquire skills. They do learn to self-regulate. They do meet teachers and EAs and principals that are life-changing and positive. They meet some that aren't so good, but hey, that's life.
That's his life.
And
we
they
go
learn
back to
resilience.
the shortened day. So
Yeah.
you want a paper record,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
Sorry.
you've been called to pick. That's okay. You've been called to
No
pick up your kid.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, well, I need something in writing, please.
Yeah.
For the parent, and I think most of us are like this in the beginning, because it's tricky, right? Because if you start asking for things, then they're going to go ding, ding, ding. One of those moms, right?
Well, they're going to do that anyway.
They're going to do it anyway. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, right?
Yeah.
Better that you show evidence
Yes.
that the kid let's just call it what it is. They can't manage your kid,
Yeah.
you know? And you hope that they would see you're asking for a paper trail would be your way of helping them get more supports into their school.
Yeah. No.
But that doesn't really happen, does it?
No.
What happens sometimes in your experience?
Well, like you said, you can become one of those moms,
Yeah.
one of those parents.
Teachers, we really are nice.
We're
just exhausted.
we're exhausted, and we're so.
We didn't ask for this either.
These are our babies.
Yeah.
We have been tasked with raising them to become human beings that will contribute to society, that will enjoy life, that, maybe they'll help you understand things a little bit better. We want them to succeed so badly. We want them to succeed.
Yeah.
And we get so passionate.
Yeah.
And we know when we look back, sometimes we're like, okay, I know the school staff was doing the best they could.
Yeah.
I know they were strapped for resources. There was a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
But it's just, we get so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And if this was your child, how would you be seeing this?
Well, we have to get rid of this us and them.
Yeah.
And not in a kumbaya way,
No.
but in a real practical way.
Yeah.
And it's a systemic problem. I think the three of us have probably done a pretty good job at developing good relationships with teachers and principals, and I'm all about that. Like, I don't want to make anybody. Well, yes, I had.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we should, unless there's no one's posting questions, so we can wind down. But just to deal with this kind of the wall, not the wall, but you've had to pick up your kid a lot of time, or you're getting constant phone calls about your child's behavior. What do you want? What should a parent ask a teacher to do? And at the same time, try to present that we want to be collaborative. We want, to say that I need a written record, but I'm not trying to make a case that you're a crap teacher.
Well,
I'm trying to make a case that my kid needs more support.
And in many circumstances, I'll ask, what happened in his or her day leading up to this? What happened just before this happened? What other activities happened that day? And that might lead you to some answers as to what's going on in the day that is causing an issue. And around this time of day is usually when I get the phone call. Maybe it's right after gym class. Maybe the sound echoing off the walls, bouncing off the walls in gym class is just too much. It's a breaking point. And then you get back to the classroom and halfway through, there's something challenging that happens. And you find out that, okay, well, it's every time my child is in gym class.
When we had Miko doing a Facebook Live, one of the things we asked him was, how long did it take from the time that you started to get agitated to the point where you just couldn't take it anymore and you blew, And he said 20 minutes. So again, this is the neurotypical kind of thinking. It's just like that there's a direct cause and effect. Somebody pushed me, I'm pissed off, I punched them in the nose, right? And so, often we have to really trace back.
The slow build.
And the slow build. And I think about, like, how tough are our kids?
Oh, they're amazing.
That they can hold on for 20 minutes trying to subdue an extreme emotion or an extreme outburst, And how can we help schools really understand that? I know Laura says some people do, but I'm not so sure. Otherwise, why would suddenly you get that meeting about being excluded or about being suspended or come get your kid now? Come get your kid now, He's out of control. Maybe he's not under control. Maybe he needs help. Maybe he needs a little love.
Well, it's teaching the system sort of the basics of ABA, that behavior is a communication, that behavior is, for many of our kids on the spectrum, it's their first language. Language is not their first language. And I remember learning that
ding,
point.
Ding, ding, I'm keeping that.
Language is not their first language. Behavior is. And once you learn that and you take data on the behavior, then what appears to be random aggression, violence, behavior starts to become the sending of a message. I'm in pain. I'm anxious. I'm scared. I feel alone. I need help. And, anybody that's in the school system that has half a heart can respond to that and feel that.
And it may be one particular staff member too. Maybe you're not getting through the principal, but maybe you've got, a good dialogue going on with an EA or, the spec ed teacher or the teacher and
custodian
or even the custodian.
Secretary.
Like if you have a good dialogue going with any staff member.
And thank you to all of you people who are wonderful and kind to our children.
Then they can maybe be your gateway into figuring things out.
So when we talk about this election coming up, and one of our asks is we want the province to commit to ABA in the schools, real ABA. We're not talking about question, answer, response, here's your cookie, right? We're not talking about obeying the rules
what ABA is.
This long discussion has been about ABA indirectly, in terms of our understanding how to help our kids communicate, and for us to understand how to communicate with our children. It's a process. Why if so much is known about applied behavioral analysis, that we haven't revolutionized the way we educate everybody?
Well, I'll say this. I think looking back on the 13 years that the OAC has been around now it's 13, the bureaucracy that we took on at the Ministry of Children and Youth Services and the fight that we helped champion for direct funding and a change to the Ontario Autism Program, that bureaucracy was about this big. The changes that we're trying to tackle now, that we're asking for, is housed in a ministry where the bureaucracy is I sort of feel like when I was young, I danced the part of Clara in the Nutcracker, and there's a part where she goes into the dream sequence where the tree starts to get taller and taller and taller and taller. And to me, in this journey of pushing for change for our kids in the school system, every time I visit that building at Bay and Wellesley where the education ministry is, it gets taller and taller and taller and taller. And there's so many moving parts, and nowhere in that system is the child's need at the center. And what we're asking is nothing short of a revolution in classrooms. We're calling for a fundamental structural change to the way that individual classrooms work. And there's funding pieces, and there's collective agreements, and there's cultures of school, and there's systemic limitations, and it's massive. And if it took us 13 years to get what we wanted in the OAP, and we've still got more work
Ontario
to do there.
Autism Program, OAP.
This battle's, I hope to see some positive change before I kick the bucket.
Yeah.
But what we can do is we can put special education front and center during this election campaign, during municipal election campaigns for school trustees. We can go to all candidates meetings and say, what will you do to make the school system better for special education students? And even the term special education is offensive. Mm-hmm. It implies there are normal kids and there are special kids. Yeah. And every kid is special, and no one learns the same way.
Yeah.
And
okay, so let me get this straight. You gotta be patient.
Yeah.
You have to be able to negotiate. Mm-hmm. You have to stay calm under pressure and not take things personally. Yeah. You have to understand the law. You have to understand education policies. Then you have to understand civics and the structure of government and how it works. And then you have to understand that there are people who have jobs that maybe they don't care. And then what else do we have to do?
You just have to be perfect. That's the thing. You have to be
That's
perfect.
The message for today.
I'm really interested, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but in Nova Scotia, they have just recently made the decision to move away from elected school boards and go to one large advisory committee for the entire province.
Yeah. Tricky.
I'm interested to see how that plays out, because, and I said it in the last Facebook Live, we have 72 different school boards.
Yeah.
And we have 72 different governments.
Yeah.
73 because of our provincial.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and they're all deciding to do different things.
It is one of those things.
Depends on where your postal code is deciding your rights.
Yeah. It is. It's a tricky thing because when Harris was
don't do that.
What does that? We're not partisan, really. But at one time, being a school board person was a full-time job, and that was eliminated. They became part-time people, and they are anyway. But the school boards were defanged, and perhaps the people who run for those positions are not doing it for the right reasons.
Well, and stay tuned. There's an interest group that's going to throw a curveball into this election by raising the specter of funding for Catholic schools. As an issue.
This gets more and more complicated, and so unless anyone wants to post a question.
Well, we had this one question from
yes,
Joy.
from Joy. Hi,
Yeah,
Joy. There was, yeah, okay, let's go.
So, okay.
And then
so
we should probably wind down, yeah?
We should.
Yeah.
So she asks, and I'll throw this to Christine, due to budget cuts, the homeschool program is no longer an option for my son. As a result, the school is pushing him out. The board said they abolished the homeschool program because they believe in inclusion, but the reality is very different. I'd love advice on how to fight for my son to remain in mainstream education without the support of a homeschool program.
So is she referring to the curriculum being delivered at home?
No, HSP classes are
Is that homeschool program?
yeah,
or
homeschool program. Yeah. They're classes, they were in Toronto, classes inside the schools. And some kids would do, for example, a half day with, I'm sure, I'm not the authority, okay?
That's okay.
Well, a half day with more supports and then be folded into the mainstream classroom, things like that. So, but they no longer exist in Toronto as far as I understand. So the supports you once had, that were once there are gone.
Weird.
Yeah.
I always go back to human rights.
Yeah.
The Human Rights Code dictates that your child has a right to accommodation.
Yeah.
It is the duty of the school and the school board to provide accommodation so that that child can receive the curriculum. Now, some school boards will say, well, accommodation means indirect support, which is like I would say the lowest level, the least amount of support when it comes to IPRC. And if a child is not accessing the curriculum because they're not being properly accommodated, then there's an issue there.
Yeah. So back to the parent, right?
It goes back to human rights.
Parent, back
We
to
have to do
negotiating.
the
You have
we
to
have
do
to
it.
file the complaint.
Yeah. And going to exclusion, one thing I wanted to be sure to mention was, regardless of what the Education Act says, regardless of what PPM 145 says, there is a whole other section that says you cannot exclude a child that is registered in your school. And if a child is being excluded and has a disability, the Children and Family Services Review Board sees that as neglect on the part of the school, and they want to hear about it.
I wish
There
I'd
is
known
an
that
application that you can fill out through, so Child and Family Services Review Board, there's an application that you can submit, and they will hear your case, and they view it as neglect, and therefore illegal.
Wow. And then there's the special education tribunals, and there's the whole human rights process, which seems daunting, but I want to assure parents, like I've been through it twice, and it's doable if you get some good help. But it's so hard because, again, the burden falls back
to you.
us as parents and
needing to know the information.
Yeah.
I find this very bizarre, and I hope that our work together and the work that you moms and dads and aunts and uncles are doing will change this. I don't understand. I really don't understand how it's gotten to this point for some families. It doesn't make any sense to me, other than it feels like we're living a Stephen Leacock story. That's what it feels like to me. Remember the one where he went to the bank? It's not as funny. He goes to the bank, and we hope that if you've managed to watch this entire video, that it was helpful for you. If you're dealing with a suspension, if you're dealing with your child being excluded from school, if you're dealing with an expulsion, obviously Laura and Christine can't solve this problem for you, but my hope is in their sharing their knowledge and their experiences that you won't feel quite so alone. Christine has volunteered to help. You can message Christine. Laura is overwhelmed. You are welcome to message me, but two documents to refer people to that you can find on the OAC resources page.
One is the really helpful education guide that Christine has prepared, and the other was prepared by our senior director, Melanie Battaglia.
That's great.
And it's a legal resources thing. Also, shout out to our friends at Arch Disability Law. Their website is great. advocacyforinclusion.com is great. You know, there's, and being in a Facebook group with 4,000 people is great.
Yeah.
You know, access the hive mind, and you know, we see people posting all the time going, you know, where's a good school in Toronto? I don't know, maybe we should start a Google Doc to track great principals and where they're going.
Yeah.
But, you know, you don't have to do it alone, I guess, is the one saving grace.
Find friends. Sometimes online friends, that's all you can find right now. I saw a lady who posted, hi from Bancroft, hi Erin from Bancroft. And everyone who will take the time to watch this, we know that we ramble, but again, the hope is that you will know that you're not alone, and that you got to get involved. I hate that we have to get involved. We have no choice, though.
It gets better.
It gets better.
Does.
It gets better.
It does get better.
Anything else? Gorgeous women?
I think that's, it's my opinion that we need an EA inside every single classroom in Ontario.
I could get behind that.
Yeah.
Without fail.
Right?
Whether there is a
See what
student, as you know,
Yeah.
identified or not,
Yeah.
I think that our teachers need more help.
They do. And we want to help you.
Ooh.
Help us.
Ooh.
Let's just close off with teachers, principals, professionals, ABA. Help us help you.
And
Help
show me the money.
Yes. Exactly. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.
How do
It's
we?
better.
Okay.